I'm often inspired to make videos based on comments I get on my YouTube videos. Over and over, I get people telling me that $500,000 is a lot of money for retirement, not just a modest amount. I get people telling me they could live like a king on $500,000 in retirement. And on the flip side, I get an equal amount of people who tell me that I'm crazy for retiring on such a small amount of money, that $500,000 is not enough, it'll never work, and I'll run out of money. The interesting thing is, I'll get both kinds of comments on the same video. So which is it? Is it a lot or is it not enough? Well, I think it just depends. No one can tell you how much you need to live on, how much you need for retirement, and how much you need to budget. We all have such different expenses. It makes a big difference where you live, how healthy you are, if you have debt, if you own your home, and on and on. On the one side, there's a very large group of people who think you need millions of dollars to retire. If you spend a lot of money, if you have debt, and if your expenses are higher than most people, you probably do need millions. Everyone's definition of comfortable living is very different. On the other side, there's a very large group of people who think $500,000 is an excessive amount of money and not attainable. It is a lot of money, but not when you think about it lasting for 30 plus years in retirement. If you use the 4% rule, for example, that's only $20,000 a year. Now, if you live in another country or you live in your RV or something like that, that might be very doable. But for most of us, that's not quite enough to live on. I see it as a modest amount. I've explained before why I think $500,000 is a modest amount to retire on. It's not low income by any means, but it's also not wealthy. In 2024, the federal poverty level for one person was $15,060 a year. I would consider that low income. The median salary for Americans age 55 to 64, which is my age group, is $65,900 a year. So that's sort of average. And then I'd call anything over $120,000 a year higher income. You have to pay higher premiums for Medicare Part B if your modified adjusted gross income is over $103,000 a year. Now that I'm retired, my modified adjusted gross income with my $500,000 portfolio, my small $800 a month pension, and my YouTube income should be about $31,000 a year. So it's not quite low income, but it's a bit less than the average income. That's why I categorize it as modest income. It comes down to what your expenses are and how much more you want to have beyond that to have fun with. Hopefully, you'll also get Social Security and maybe even some other income source. Then it really is doable. But I don't personally see it as living like a king or wealthy by any means. This is just my opinion. One person's dream retirement might be floating around in their little boat fishing or puttering around in their garden. For someone else, it might be lots of extravagant world travel and fine dining. A comfortable retirement will look different for everyone. Most retirees have much less than $1 million saved for retirement, like 97% of us. But maybe you'll have Social Security, you'll have a paid off home, you'll be debt free, and you'll live in an area where the cost of living is lower. All of these things are going to influence the amount of savings you need. Most people really don't need $1 million to retire. There are lifestyle choices you can make that won't drain your savings. No two retirements are alike. Some people have mortgage payments and are supporting family. Others have no dependents and no debt. Most Americans retire with nowhere near $1 million. It's really important to figure out a number that works for you. And that's not going to be a number you read about. Retirement is personal. It's personal. The exact amount of money you need will depend on your unique situation and lifestyle. There's not a one-size-fits-all amount of money that will work for everyone. And just for the record, I'm definitely not trying to tell anyone how much they need to retire. I'm just sharing my own journey and how I am doing in retirement in hopes that it can help some people with their planning. No one can tell anyone else how much money they need because we're all so different with different situations. One article I read said $500,000 can support an annual withdrawal of $34,000 for up to 25 years, and that if your lifestyle can be maintained with $30,000 a year, $500,000 should be enough for a secure retirement. Another article said depending on your personal circumstances, $500,000 could last for decades or it could be exhausted within a few years. Several factors influence this. This includes spending habits, investment strategy, your age at retirement, and inflation, among other things. Another article I read said $500,000 can work, but it requires thoughtful planning and smart financial decisions. Stretching your savings may explore reducing your expenses, exploring part-time work, and investing wisely. And honestly, these articles were harder to find. If you Google how much do you need to retire, it says most Americans think they need $1.46 million as a minimum amount. But Google also goes on to say that this number varies greatly depending on location and individual circumstances. I agree with that 100%. If I had $1.46 million, I feel like I could live like a king in retirement. So most of the information out there says you need at least $1 million to retire, but other people don't think that's nearly enough. Here, one of my viewers thinks you need $2.6 million or more. If you live in a high cost of living area, still have a mortgage, have higher expenses, and maybe have health issues, you probably do need that much. Susie Orman says you need $5 million to retire. $5 million? Really? I would guess that it's a fraction of 1% of people that actually retire with that much money. Many people don't really know how much they need for retirement and often overestimate it. While $1 million might make sense as a target number for people with higher incomes, people with modest incomes don't need nearly that much. It's hard to imagine how far your savings will go in retirement. You need enough money for retirement to meet your own needs, and that'll be very different from someone else's. The actual size of the nest egg you need will depend on so many different factors. This includes your income, your marital status, your expected longevity, where you plan to live in retirement, how healthy you are, if you own your own home, if you have debt, and if you want to leave money to your heirs. These things make a huge difference. What people think they'll need for retirement and what they actually end up with is often miles apart. Trying to project spending for a 30-plus year retirement can be really tricky because we can only think in today's terms. But planning is so important because then at least you have a target number to aim for. You're not just saving as much as you can and hoping it'll be enough. You have to put the time in tracking, calculating, and planning to figure out your own personal retirement number. So why can't the needed amount for retirement just be individual? Only you know your own expenses. I see so much debate and so many strong opinions about this. I'm just posing that there's not one amount that will work for everyone. But I want to hear what you think. What amount of money do you think people need for retirement? Or what amount do you think you need for retirement? If you want to share, feel free to leave a comment. If you're seeing me for the first time, hi, I'm Julie and this channel's Happy on Monday. Thanks for joining me. If you found this helpful, please like. And if you're interested in retiring early, consider subscribing. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming what you once thought you couldn't do. Hope to see you again soon.